put this on here. No. There it is. So we're going to be talking about the last 5 verses of 1 Peter, the 5th chapter, and then we're going to get into 2 Peter, and just time to talk about that. We may get into a few verses of 2 Peter, but that's about it. I'm missing Jack, so I'll let him know how far we get.
I think he'll be here.
Okay. So the last part, I just put this verse up. There you go. If you want to see the big screen, turn around and look in the back. I mean, that is awesome. Anyway, I really like this picture more than what it said, but it's about the first part. I really like, it's the beginning of 1 Peter. God the Father knew you and chose you long ago, and his Spirit has made you holy. As a result, you have obeyed him and have been cleansed by the blood of Jesus Christ. May God give you more and more grace and peace. And that's how he starts 1 Peter. What a beautiful, I'm with Scott. I really enjoyed his teaching of 1 Peter. It was really good. There's so much to it. But I think there's a lot in 2 Peter too, just kind of looking at it. Anyway, just kind of start that off because we're still in 1 Peter. And then I've got this up here for the letter to God's elect about 2 Peter. And then just as an aside, I found this. It's a timeline of Peter. I thought it was very interesting. So at the top one it says, Peter becomes a disciple of Jesus. And the dates on here are like 28 and 30. So it all depends on, do you go with the Gregorian calendar or do you go with the actual time? Because the Gregorian calendar is like 3 or 4 years off. Because when it says like 0, Jesus was like 3 or 4 years old. So it's off a little bit. So that's why the 28 or 30 of when he became a disciple. Then just before the crucifixion, Peter denies Jesus, and that's in 30 or 33. Well, we'll just use the 33. That's easier. And then it has the timeline of the death, resurrection of Jesus in 33. Then Peter witnesses the resurrection and preaches at Pentecost, also in 33. Then he becomes the leader because he's giving out the keys first to the Jews and then to the Gentiles in 33. Peter witnesses to Cornelius, and that has on here about 38, as much as they can guess. Then it has Peter imprisoned by Agrippa, about 44. Peter leaves Jerusalem, about 44, after his imprisonment, and he goes to Rome in 50 to 54. And then you have, right around that time, Nero starts his reign in 54. Peter then writes his first letter from Rome about 63, 64, 62, somewhere in there. I've read different times. And then there's the fire in Rome. Nero blames the Christians. That's actually, this is amazing. That's July 9th of 64. We know the exact day and year when that fire happens. That's amazing, because the history was so well recorded that we know it was July 19th in 64. So anyway, Peter, after writing the second letter, is martyred in Rome, and it could be 64 to 67, somewhere in there. And that's the end of his timeline. It has another note in here, so I thought there was more. But after he's died, that's the end of his timeline, so kind of makes sense. So I thought that was just kind of interesting, having that timeline to kind of tell us about Peter's life, and because of that, we know about when he wrote these letters to these Christians. And I found this other one, because we were talking about major persecutions. of the Christians, and that's what he was warning about in 1 Peter. So this has the early Jewish persecution in the first century. That's the persecution that Paul was encountering when he was preaching. You had the Judaizing teachers that were following him and teaching, persecuting him. Then you have the early sporadic persecutions. And that was Nero, Trajan, and Domitian. They were emperors right in a row that started. It wasn't like a worldwide persecution, but you have Nero, especially in Rome. He's persecuting them for setting the fire at Rome. And then you have Trajan and Domitian, and they were more over in Asia and going over towards Jerusalem. And then another major persecution was Marcus Aurelius in 162. Then you have Severus in 192, Maximus in 235, Decius 249, Valerian, and then Diocletian. And then that's the age of martyrs. The Valerian was the great persecution, where it was worldwide. The Roman territories were persecuting Christians everywhere. It's just, if you were a Christian, you're going to be persecuted. And kind of to get it a little closer here, the dates from 90 to 96 was Domitian, and mostly in Rome and Asia Minor. And then a noted martyr was Clement of Rome. Then 98 to 117 was Trajan. And again, it was kind of sporadic, but mostly in like Asia and Asia Minor. And Ignatius was a well-known martyr. And then Marcus Aurelius, Septimus Severus, and then the others. The worst of all, I guess, is Diocletian. Was the worst of all. 400,000 Christians were killed under him. So that was in 303, 311. So 300 years later, there's a major suffering that's going on by Christians in the world. Okay, I love outlines. I like this outline. It's really simple of 1 Peter. It's salutation, salvation, sanctification, suffering, and summary. That's just really easy to see and understand about the 5 chapters of 1 Peter. So it's the salutation, the greeting that Paul is talking to the dispersed Christians, living, and then the first section is living out the hope within that we have. And I like this one, sanctification. Do the right thing no matter what. Where Peter's telling all the Christians, do the right thing, whether you suffer persecution or not. Always do the right thing. So if somebody was going to speak ill of you or say wants to persecute you, they have no basis in order to do that, because you've only done the right thing every time. Every time you have a decision to make, you always do the right thing. So, and then in the suffering, stand firm because Jesus is coming. And then at the end, stand firm, which is at where we're going to talk about in chapter 5, verses 12 through 14. This is another kind of an outline. I like that, just for the overall book. And instead of starting from the top, we're going to start from the bottom and go up. Because it has, I don't know if you can read that, right there on the side there. Right here it says date and setting. If you turn over and maybe stand on one foot, you can read that a lot easier. But it says date and setting, and it's written from Rome, again, around 64. And it's just before the time of Nero is persecuted, before so it's before July of 64. And then it's also just a few years before Peter is killed. So that's this first book. It's just a few years before he's killed. The next one is the author. Again, we have this Peter. And who's he writing it to? That's a really softball. Who's Peter writing? Somebody said it. Who's? Christians, yeah. Jewish Christians and Gentile Christians. So, and then there's three, this person breaks it up into three major divisions. One's set apart for blessing, set apart for lifestyle, set apart for suffering. And then if you can read that in there, there's the different verses that they use to break that up. The end of the first part is that we are living stones in the new temple. So that's set apart for blessings because we are a holy priesthood, living stones. The last verse on the set apart for lifestyle is don't live your old life. Instead, live life in service to Christ and to others. And that's from verses chapter 4, 1 through 11. And then the last one is, they have 5, 1 through 4, and 5 through 11 is the instructions to the leaders of the church there, and the instructions to all the people. So that's the three major areas of 1 Peter. And then again, this is a pretty good one. It just breaks it up, 1 Peter, into living our hope, our submission, and God's honor, our suffering, and Christ's suffering. And then kind of breaking it up into informing, exhorting, and encouraging. So that's kind of, basically, that's how 1 Peter's set up. If you guys have any questions, just stop me. That'll be okay. Otherwise, I'm moving on. Okay? And then there's key verses in here. That's pretty good. Verses 1, 3 through 5, 13 through 16, and so on. In verse 1, I kind of wanted to go over that in because we talked about the salutation is Peter